Welcome to the Story A Day podcast. This is Julie Duffy from storyaday.org, encouraging you to be a writer every day, not someday.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Julie from Story A Day here, and I am coming to you this week from the heart of Shawlands in the south side of Glasgow, my hometown. I have travelled for the first time in quite some time, as you can imagine, to catch up with friends and family. So after 2 weeks here in Scotland, I'm sure regular listeners are going to detect some differences in my accent. I'll be quite interested to hear if you do. But here we are. It is June of 2022 as I record this. And obviously, a lot of us have been in this weird place for quite a long time of not being able to go anywhere or do anything. And it has been such a gift to get away from my own four walls and my limited routine just for a little break. There's a couple of things that I want to share with you that I've come up with during this break. And one is about that thing we all always talk about not having enough time. I stepped away from the whole Story A Day shebang for 2 weeks, and somehow the world has not come to an end. Part of that is because of the systems I put in place before I went away. Part of it is because of systems I have in place in general. A lot of it is to do with the goodwill of this community, and especially the superstars who are looking after each other while I'm away. But the real lesson here is that we are rarely as busy or as required to be on all the time as we think we are when we're just in our everyday rut. And that is one of the beauties of a vacation, is that you get away and you see things from a different perspective. The different perspective that I'm seeing is that I am not actually as busy as I think I am. Sometimes I think I'm too busy to write. Certainly, sometimes I think I'm too busy to write fiction. And the truth is, I'm not. And you may be very, very busy. But for most people listening to this podcast, there are times where we're just doing stuff just because. Or we're doing busy work. Or we're doing things that we feel we ought to do, not things that we want to do. And we need to get comfortable, get ourselves out of that rut, and get comfortable with doing the thing that we love, which is to write. And understanding that the world will not fall apart if we sneak off to write for a little bit. Obviously, there are seasons in life where that is not true. There are emergencies that come up. There are busy times in life. But in general, we always think we're too busy to do a lot of the stuff that we want to do. So some of the things that I've been doing that have really helped me to get away and get perspective. Before I travelled, I put some things in place. So if you know you have a writing project coming up, you can put some things in place. Communicate with the people in your life and say, I'm going to be busy working on this thing which means a lot to me. In my case, I'm going to be busy travelling and visiting people that mean a lot to me. So I need to make some changes. If you've got a temporary project, you can do that. You can communicate with people that this is going to be important to you and that you need to be working on it, and that, you might not be as available for them for this next few weeks while you finish that thing, but when you come back, you're going to be all refreshed and happy. Another thing you can do is you can put systems in place so that you're not wasting a lot of time making decisions. So if you always have your writing stuff handy, if you always keep your drafts in a particular folder, if you always have your favourite pen filled with ink, if you always have everything ready to go and a frictionless system for getting to work, that can be a great thing. Or some people will have a system where they work on correcting yesterday's writing in the morning and then working on new stuff in the evening. Or you might have a system where you just have a list of places that you want to submit to. And so you're going to brainstorm stories for those this week. And next week you're going to write the beginnings of a story. So whatever you can do to systematize what you're doing, not in a way that makes it not fun anymore, not in a way that makes it uncreative, but there's a lot of time that we waste as writers and creative people thinking, what am I going to do? And, well, I could do this or I could do that. And we don't put limits on ourselves. I think that's why we do so well when we have other people imposing limits on us. So for example, if there's a deadline for a contest coming up, we can usually meet it. If there's a challenge happening like Story a Day or NaNoWriMo, we usually do a lot better than if we've just got the whole world of writing to do. One of the ways that I encourage people to put limits on themselves is to really investigate what kind of writer you are, what kind of writing you want to be doing. And that's one of the things that I have a presentation on that I'll be giving later this year. I'll let you know about that when it comes up. But putting those kinds of limits on yourself, like you could write anything, but there are lots of things that you don't want to write, lots of things you might not be good at. And how do you know that? Well, there's some, you can experiment, there's some exercises you can do, but I do encourage you to find, to not be under the impression that you should be doing everything, because that is not the way to mastery. And you don't want to close any doors that could be great opportunities for you. But if you leave all the doors open, then you're never going to get anything done. There's no room, you know. If you don't have walls and a ceiling and doors that you can close, that's not a room, that's a field. And if it's endless, then you don't know where the limits are. You don't know when you're finished. You don't know when you've succeeded. You never get a chance to get good at anything. So putting systems in place, putting limits on what you do, these are some of the things you can do to rule out that constant feeling that you could be doing more, that constant feeling of being too busy. These are some of the things that I've noticed as I've stepped away for a couple of weeks, that, you know, that treadmill that we've been on for the past few years and maybe for the past few decades, depending on how your life has been going, that treadmill isn't real. And you do have some agency in how busy you are, how much busy work you do, and how much meaningful work you do. There's a guy called Cal Newport who talks about deep work. There's a book called Deep Work. Sometimes when I read that book, I get a little annoyed with him because he makes it sound easy to do the deep work and to turn off all the distractions, and it's absolutely not easy. But it's nice to know that it is out there as an option, that you can turn off your busyness and decide only to work on certain things. One of the other great joys of being away from my normal environment is just that experience of seeing things differently. Now it's weird because I'm back in my home country, so everything is familiar, and yet it's a little bit different because it's not my everyday environment anymore, and also things have changed since last time I was here. So just seeing how people experience life differently from your everyday, the people around you, the people who you see regularly, the people you talk to regularly, getting a different pace of life, seeing how differently people shop, you know, different grocery stores, different ways of living is a wonderful thing. Now, I'm not saying that crossing an ocean is going to be possible or advisable for everybody at the moment or at all, but there are other things that you can do to break yourself out of your regular routine. So hopefully in the first half of this podcast, I've convinced you a little bit that you can and must make time for yourself, for the things that are important for you, and that the world will not fall apart if you do. In this part, I want to encourage you to think about ways that you can see the world anew, even if you don't cross an ocean. So maybe it's as simple as, if you always go the same way to work, go a different way. You know, drive down different streets, walk down different streets, see what those houses are like, what's in their garden. watch TV from a different country. You can stream all kinds of stuff now. There's no excuse for us to be insular and stuck in our ruts, because there's a world of podcasts and videos and TV stations that we can watch and just see the world a different way. If you always go for a walk in the same place, maybe go for the walk backwards. You always go anti-clockwise around that park, walk the other way. If you stop occasionally, crouch down and literally smell the roses, or look under a leaf, pretend you're out with a toddler, stop every few yards and pick things up and grub around in the dirt and just look at the world from a perspective that you don't normally look at it. Sit on a different park bench, go to a different beach, cycle somewhere instead of driving somewhere. Even something like that can change your perspective completely. You're trying to cycle up a hill that you drive up every day, you have a sudden perspective on quite how steep and long that hill is. When you walk down a street instead of driving down a street, you get a sense for the scale of the architecture, you get a sense for the smell of the place, you get a sense for the scale of the world and the sounds and all of the senses. We talk about senses, we know now that there's more than 5 senses, and one of the senses that I was just listening to a program about is this sense called proprioception, which is the one that lets you know where bits of your body are in relation to their environment. It's why we can stretch our hands out, close our eyes and touch our nose most of the time, unless you're doing a field sobriety test and failing it. But this sense proprioception is this sense of where we are in space. So if you take yourself somewhere, even somewhere familiar, and close your eyes and let your proprioception tell you about how big are the buildings around you, where is the noise of that bird coming from. There are so many ways, even without the wonderful good fortune I have had to travel to another country, there are ways that you can make your own environment unfamiliar. And I think unfamiliarity is something that writers and artists and creators need to cultivate, because our job is to take the familiar and make it unfamiliar and remix it and show the world and life to people in a way that they haven't thought about it before. I think that's been one of the hardest things about the last 2 years or 2+ years of this COVID life we've been living. For us, is the lack of new stimulus. And even if you can't get away, we can all work to see the place we are as unfamiliar. One of the things I've done while I've been here is I've been reading books only by British authors, preferably Scottish authors, because I'm right here so I'm reading a book at the moment called Until I Find You by Anna Smith, who was a reporter for the local Glasgow newspapers and is now writing mysteries, thrillers. And so I'm reading books by writers from the place where I'm staying, and it's great because I'm envious of them that they have been here and got to live in this one place for so long, that they're so familiar with it that they can write such detailed and beautiful portraits of the places that they live. So don't think that if you have always are just kind of like stuck in one place that you're missing out somehow on this novelty that I'm talking about, because your job is to see your place through a writer's eyes. It's helpful for me to get away and remind myself of that by traveling, but when I come home, you can bet I'm going to be trying to find ways to see life from a writer's point of view, and I'm going to be having a big fiction push when I get home, because I need to remind myself that I'm going to take all of these experiences and write them down. Not necessarily exactly what I've been experiencing here, But this sense of seeing life from a slightly different angle, that's the gift that we as writers bring to everyday people. I'm reading these books that are set in my home country, but I'm seeing, that these writers have seen what to highlight, what to leave out, what's normal, what's different. And that's a real gift that we give to people. Not everyone wants to be a writer. I know when you're trying to be a writer, it seems like everybody is writing, but not everyone wants to be a writer. A lot of people want to consume stories, whether it's through books or movies or audiobooks or some other medium. A lot of people want to consume stories, and not everyone has the gift of being able to take a look at life and select the pieces that make a good story and put them together. I think you are one of those people. You wouldn't be listening to me if you weren't. Just remember, it's a huge, huge gift. You have it within you, and you just need to take a moment to remind yourself, to lift yourself out of the rut and go, you know what? I can see things that other people can't see. I can join dots that other people can't join up, and I enjoy it. Don't you enjoy it? Sometimes when you're writing and it's going well, that's what I want you to think about this week. You don't have to, but that's what I'm thinking about this week. This idea of novelty and of seeing life from a slightly different angle and having the skill and the words to capture it and communicate it to someone else. It is such a gift, and we don't appreciate, I think, how this thing which comes relatively easily to us, to have a facility for words, is not there for everyone. But it's a gift we can give to people. And there are parts of storytelling that are difficult for all of us, but we're still miles and miles ahead of people who just enjoy a good story and don't really want to write them. There's a need for what we do, and I hope that you will give yourself and the rest of us the gift of building time to do the thing that makes you most you, that makes you happy, and understand that it does take time and it does take effort, and you do have to build space into your life for this, but it's doing wonders for you, it's doing wonders for the world, it's a gift to other people. It's important, and not everyone can do this. I think you're one of the people that can do this, and I hope that you will, and I hope that you will find ways to find novelty in your life this week and to see the world from that slightly skewed point of view, and that it gives you some joy. So most of all, keep writing.
Thanks for listening. Why not come over to the blog at storyaday.org and check out this week's writing prompts and articles. And in the meantime, have a great creative week, and of course, keep writing.